All right, folks, welcome back to the Property Couch podcast, and we've got a very, very important episode for you today. We are talking about sexy advice versus practical advice, and what is the difference and why do you need to know? And Ben, this could be the most important episode you and I have done since way back in 2015 with episode 1 on We Fix Bad Property Advice. What else do we cover?
Well, Bryce, that's right. You're asking the question of an investor. What do I want? Do I want boring, practical, but long-term longevity, or do I want shiny and quick with higher risks?
Folks, we got to check that out. Let's rip into the show.
Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle channel, co-host of Escape from the City on the ABC, and partner of Empower Wealth Advisory. Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the founder of Empower Wealth Advisory, named the 2018 and 2019 Property Advisory Firm of the Year. Stay tuned as they bring you the insider's guide to property, finance, and money management.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Property Couch podcast. And of course, welcome back to you too, Ben. How are you this morning?
Mate, I'm well. I'm excited about today's episode because there's a lot of stuff happening in the marketplace at the moment. So it's good to sort of check in where things are at. But there's a lot of irrational exuberance going on. So trying to put a lid on it in terms of how that lives. So looking forward to today's show.
For those of you that are listening to this episode today, we are taking you all the way back to the very beginning of the genesis of this podcast, where Ben and I said, let's fix bad property investment advice, because over the last few weeks, we've been trying our very best to shine a light on what we think is the new version of what that looks like. And today we're going to paint a picture around what it looks like to have practical advice versus sexy advice. And I think it could be one of the most important episodes that we've done for a long time, Ben, because I guess for our listeners, they're not privy to some of the stuff that we actually get to see, Ben, in terms of what's actually happening in the marketplace. We see very wide and we see very broadly on some of the approaches that people are taking. So I guess we're going to talk about what planning looks like. We are going to declare up front that we have a solution within our business. So if you're new to our podcast or you've only been listening to us for a little while, within our business, we have a planning part of our business. So you should actually have a reasonable level of skepticism on what we're about to say, and make sure that it sounds right in your gut based on what we're saying, because we are not unbiased here, but we are going to try our very best to give you what we think from our own experience and from what we're trying to do on this podcast, and stay as independent as we can to provide some information to our audience. So I guess that's probably the way that we want to set this up today, Ben, just to make sure we declare our own biases as well.
Yeah, I think, the way in which I like to look at it is, what type of investor are you? Because we can get seduced by certain things. So we want to be clear about the pathway you're taking, and is that pathway transactional? Is that pathway aggressive? Does it carry higher risk? Or are you looking for more passive longevity in terms of the returns you're trying to look for? And I think, because that's important, right? At the end of the day, anyone who's investing, it's their money. But if they're getting advice from people, and there is a conflicted interest in terms of convincing people to take certain investment advice. And what we have noticed is, over the last 2 or 3 years, there's been an absolute explosion of operators playing in the property investment space. There's no ifs and buts about it. Years ago, we could say there was sort of like 2 dozen or 3 dozen off the plan, house and land package, larger businesses who were doing all of this sort of very aggressive selling. And we knew that they were buying dud investments, usually in dud locations. Now, I think that message has got through over the last decade, but certainly in these last so existing property is the way to go. And at the moment, there's a lot of pumping and dumping in certain markets, or pumping of certain markets, which is artificially inflating property prices in those areas. So we want to make sure that you understand the fundamentals and risks around that.
And thanks to you and Dave last week, Ben, for stepping in my absence, and you showcased an incredible case of what happens when this goes wrong in terms of sexy advice and practical advice. So if you haven't heard last week's episode, you probably should go and have a listen to that, because it's going to build some real context. So at the end of this episode, go and listen to that, and it will really wrap together two very important pieces of content that we want to provide to our community. So we're going to rip into the show. Before we get there, Ben, there's a very important PIPA survey that you want to talk about today that's of interest to all property investors. Well, all investors, let's be honest.
Yeah, well, all investors. I mean, at the end of the day, every year, this is the 11th year that the Property Investment Professionals of Australia, which is the peak industry association, does a sample of over 1,000, hopefully a couple of thousand this year is our target, to try and get a couple of thousand bits of feedback from property owners, property investors. And this year, and last year, we really focused on the challenges around running your investment property with higher interest rates, mortgage prisons, all of the reforms that were happening around rental accommodation and minimum standards and that. This year's focus builds a little bit more, so less on the interest rate side because interest rates are coming down, but a little bit more focus on some of the bigger challenges that are re-emerging. And the biggest one of all is we are hearing some really strong rumours around the government looking at capital gains tax. So they have this large majority. They have the Greens looking at trying to not only change capital gains, they also want to change negative gearing. We don't think the Labor Party has an appetite for negative gearing, but we do think that there is this real strong belief that they will change capital gains tax. And by that, we mean the concession, the 50% concession that you get after 12 months. There is a lot of talk about that concession going down to 25%. So that is meaningful. And let's just put that in quick context, Bryce. Negative gearing was going to be grandfathered, but this won't be we can't work out how this could be a grandfathered decision. So ultimately, from that point of view, effectively, you are going to get a 50% increase on the tax that you have to pay if you sell an investment property. So now, if I wear my picker hat just quickly, we have a policy in this position where we are trying to stop speculation in the property market. We don't see speculation and some of the stuff that we're seeing happening right now as sustainable. So we actually want a sustained property market where we are seeing moderate, consistent growth over time, not this, sort of irrational exuberance, which causes property bubbles and bubbles in any market for that matter. So we have a position that says that in the first year, it should be 0%, second year, 10%, third year, 20%, fourth year. And that stops that speculation or that churn and burn stuff that we're seeing going on. But if it's just a flat 25%, that's going to affect everyone over the longer period of time. So that's why it's important. So if you are sitting back saying, I've just copped a 50% increase in the tax that I have to pay, well, what did you do about it? This is your chance to fill in the survey and have your voice heard about whether it would change the way in which you would invest, or would you invest in the future if those capital gains tax changes? So these are some of the questions that are in this new survey. It is an exhaustive survey because it is the one go-to that we have from a media and a regulatory and government position point of view, because it's coming from the investors themselves. All the other feedback they get is from industry in terms of real estate agents, property managers. This is actually coming from we as the property investor. So I know it's a passionate plea to fill it in because I know it's going to take 20, 25 to 30 minutes of your time. But in seriousness, this is your business. And if you want to stay in business and you don't want to see your business be seriously interrupted, then don't fill the survey in. But if you do and are passionate about it, you need to find that 30 minutes because this is about your livelihood. It's about the future value of the investments that you're making. And so that's why it is a bit of a passionate plea. And thank you for giving me the floor, Bryce, to talk about that.
Yeah, it's not the time for inertia, is it? It's not the time for you to go, oh yeah, I'll get around to that, or someone else will get around to it. It's actually, we're asking for every single person who is listening to this and they get a little rumble in their stomach to go, yeah, I'm gonna actually take I'm actually going to sacrifice some of my own time just to go and fill this in.
And if you're in the trade and you listen to our show, that's brilliant. We love that. This is your chance to go to your database as well and get all your property investors to fill this in. Because if we get, say, 5,000 surveys, that is an incredible data set that we can lobby the government, lobby the regulators with. And so that's why it's so important.
Let's hear your voice, folks. And it's also about making Australia competitive, right? You know, in terms of a tax regime globally, you've got to make sure that you want to attract other people to come into our markets. You only have to look into the UK and see that a lot of the wealthy people in the UK are just leaving, right? Because they're being taxed to the Scheissenhausen, right? So it's you know, it's not just about being sort of granular and talking about the property investor. There's a bigger story here about Australia as a player in the global market as well.
Kills aspiration, kills prosperity, Bryce. Anything
100%.
Taxes kill aspiration and they kill prosperity. So they are the devil of economic activity.
Wealthy people don't do tax; they just move their money where that money is treated best. So,
Correct.
it's usually the middle class that actually get most of the disadvantage from that. It's not the wealthy. Like everyone thinks, let's tax the wealthy. The wealthy got enough money to move their money elsewhere, Ben. So it's the middle class that are mainly affected by decisions like this. Hey, I'm just letting you know that our book we've got full steam, full momentum on that. We'd love for you, A, to get a copy, B, if you've got a copy and you've read it, can you leave us a review? That's super helpful. And hopefully we haven't asked for too many favours on this podcast over the journey, Ben, but we are asking for a favour here because those reviews actually do matter. We are very keen to get our life's work into as many hands as we possibly can, and reviews matter. Now, here's a little nuance that Stiggy's helped us with. If you bought the book at Barnes & Noble or Dymocks or Big W or wherever, you can still go to Amazon and leave a review, Ben. That's very kind of Amazon to allow you to do that. But if you could do that, that is the place where your review will have the most punch. And that is a favour that we ask of you. And we would love for you to do that.
Yeah, we absolutely read them. So if there's also feedback in terms of, what we missed out, or, next time if we have to do a updated version in terms of, a reprint, let us know.
And if it's a 1-star review, it's a 1-star review. That's all feedback. So that's great. Hey, my Might Submit a Theme today, Ben, is in line with what we're going to chat about today. Dave Ramsey, obviously a big podcast, a big audience over in the US, largely helping people who are sort of struggling with behaviour around retiring out debt. His strategy is different to ours, but it's very effective for the audience that he's called to serve. But he says this: you can make a 6-figure income and still be broke. I've talked to people making $200,000 a year who are living paycheck to paycheck. Why? They spend it all. Wealth isn't about income; it's about behaviour. How good is that? Whenever we increase our income, we usually increase our expenses. That is a fact of life, seen it time and time again. Most people will go and get an increase in income and go, wow, I'm going to keep my expenses the same. I'm actually not going to go and upgrade my car because the neighbour did that. And I'm now not going to go and buy a boat because my neighbour around the corner bought a boat. I'm actually going to keep my expenses the same whilst my income goes up so I can actually trap more surplus and put that into income-producing assets. Says mainly no one, Ben. Says mainly no one.
Says no one at all. Absolutely true, mate.
Except for our audience trap surplus and put it to work. But for most people, income goes up, expenses go up. And in a lot of cases, quite often expenses overtake their income. So they get into a debt spiral, which is ordinary. All right, today we want to talk about sexy versus practical advice, Ben. So I'm going to set this up by, we've all walked through, a theme park or a movie set that you can do when you go to sort of the Universal World, for example. And from the front, it looks like a full home. The doors, the windows and the works, but behind it, it's just scaffolding. There's nothing, right? It's all about facade. So it's really hiding emptiness. And that's how I want to really frame it up today in terms of some advice that people get. It's, it looks polished, but there's no depth behind it. There's no modelling, no contingencies, no plan B. So this is how I want to think about it. It's a bit like a concept car versus the family SUV. So if you go to those amazing expos and you see those concept cars and they've got these awesome angles and gull wing doors and sleek dashboards, but then you've got to sort of think to yourself, can I drive the kids to soccer in this one? Or we're not going to get it serviced. What are the parts going to be like? And who's going to be able to service it for me? But you don't need a concept car. You actually need a strategy that runs sort of every day in real conditions with real people in the back seat. And the other thing is, it's a bit like magazine architects, right? Some architects design visually stunning buildings that, they've got these amazing awards. But what about when it rains, Ben? All these angles that the builder has had to put in these magazine-worthy designs, but those intricate roofs run the risk of leaking or having these amazing, stunning, ornate lobbies that that nobody actually ever uses. But they look amazing. They win awards. They are on the front page of architect magazines. But in terms of practicality. And the final one is this, Ben, and this will relate to some, and I'm obviously going to have a cheap shot at some previous series of The Block, but I used to, when I did used to watch the Block television show, it was just frustrating when they were looking about the art on the wall of the choice of the cushions, but no one at auction is like, when someone's standing at the front of a property and they're bidding on a property at auction, they want to know, is the floor plan practical? Is the sun coming into the living areas? Is the spaces practical for my family to use? When I walk in, is there a spot for the kids to put all their stuff, their school bags? And, it's real estate 101, not Vogue magazine shots. So this is all stuff that looks impressive, but they don't serve practical needs. And really, that's what we want to set up today, Ben, in terms of what you and I want to talk about. In terms of getting a plan done for someone's financial future, we really want to distinguish and we actually want to break down the difference between what actually looks sexy, what's actually sort of topical and gets your attention and has a pattern interrupt and really sort of plays to the emotion versus what's logical and what's practical and what's actually going to serve someone for their future needs. So that's where we want to go today, Ben. So function over form is where we want to start. But what are your thoughts?
Well, I like the idea, right? I mean, at the end of the day, flashy, sexy sells. And I mean, I draw the parallel, Bryce, to looking at what's happening on Facebook and Insta and YouTube. And I'm drawing this really strong parallel with the advisors talking about massive returns really quickly and, getting me amped up about what I can do. But I don't see financial planners being able to do that, Bryce.
No.
And the reason is because they're regulated and they can't do it, right? So, but because residential property is completely unregulated, anyone can say anything and not be fact checked, not necessarily part of that. So, what you're drawing on here is this practical substance piece versus this, using your car analogy. This is what could be, but it's not necessarily based in factual reality right across the board. And I think. And then, I mean, I could go on a tangent here and talk about, obviously, then conflicted remuneration. And
we'll talk about that later. We'll definitely get into that.
And so it's just part of that strategy. So so mate, couldn't agree with you more. Tell me more about what you're talking about.
I just think, Ben, our biggest fear, and off air we talk. Our biggest fear is that in 5 years' time, people are going to look back and just go, "What have I done? What have I done?"
Correct.
And some of the strategies and some of the advice that is just being offered is just going to have people in,
last week's episode's a perfect example.
Oh my gosh.
8 properties, 8 cash flow or silver bullet properties at the cheap end of town, still no positive cash flow, a million amounts of headaches in terms of frustrating, the owner. It just doesn't feel like, what's next? A bad tenant, another major repair. Like the whole thing has just not been a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
It's created a job, and now they've got to trade their way out of that problem that they've created. So it's a perfect reminder for people in terms of, what do you want to be? Do you want to, you are still running a business, but what do you want to be? Do you want to be that person who is got a plan, a long-term plan that's going to drive longevity? Or are you in a rush Do you want to get rich quick? Do you want to, jump on board in that particular space? So tell us more, Bryce.
That's why this episode is in complement to the one that you and Dave did last week, Ben, because it is a real cautionary tale. And what our listeners, like what you and I have the privy of that our listeners don't, given what we do in our professional life, is we actually get to see the people that come back and see us later and ask us to help them fix bad advice, which is episode number 1, Ben, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's just morphed into another. It's just morphed into another version of the history. History doesn't repeat itself; people do.
and they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in advertising these get-rich-quick outcomes. And again, that they're not vetted by ASIC. They can say whatever they want to say. As a financial planning and we've got obviously financial planning, we can't talk about that. You can't hear stockbrokers basically, and you can't even do it with Bitcoin and crypto now, right? But with property, they are out there making all of these audacious claims. And at the end of the day, they're talking about their tens of millions of dollars of riches. And all of this is doing is feathering their nest in terms of their next investment. And then it's this cycle that I want to be like that. And so we understand the attraction to it because most people aren't educated as investors. And so what we're trying to do is say, take a slow, steady approach or to your point, practice.
Yeah, well, episode number 1 is we fix bad advice. I think this is episode 558. We probably should say we're fixing bad property advice again, right?
Yeah.
But Jason Zweig on investing said this, while people need good advice, what they want is advice that sounds good. The advice that sounds the best in the short run is always the most dangerous in the long run. Everyone wants the secret, the key, the roadmap to the primrose path that leads to El Dorado, the magical low-risk, high-return investment that can double your money in no time. Everyone wants to chase the returns of whatever has been hottest and to shun whatever has gone cold. And I think that last point there, Ben, is probably, it's you and I probably in desperation trying to use our voice to say, hey, listen, there is danger in them hills, right? And so when the advice becomes more about the advisor, here's some of the things that are going on, right? They could be focused on looking smart rather than being helpful, because here's some of the stuff that's going on for some of the advisors. They might want to advance their career. They might want to grow their influence. They might want to gain their next client. So sometimes there is a gap between what the client needs and what generates the most fees. Let that land. There's a gap between what the client needs and what generates the most fees.
Yeah.
And it becomes a pride versus profit scenario. And that's something that you and I have stared down numerous times over the 25 plus years that you and I have been doing. But ultimately, it comes down to a pride versus profit conversation. And sometimes complexity is the goal because it makes them sound smart at the expense of you feeling dumb.
Yeah.
And if you don't really get it, but you figure they sound smart, so they must be right. That there is the trap, folks.
Yeah.
If you just do the nod and then sign off on a strategy that you don't understand and then you don't own it, that is the enemy. And so if it sounds sexy, but it's not practical, but you don't know the difference between what's sexy and practical, that is the most dangerous advice that exists. And it's something that we want to shine a light on.
Yeah. So throughout the journey of Warren Buffett's and Charlie Munger's career, because we would consider ourselves, Bryce, as buy hold, right? We're pretty clear on that, right? Most of the time, that's our leanings, and so effectively, we're value investors in the property sense. So we try and buy good businesses at fair prices and hold them for the long term, right? That's pretty much what we do. And in watching what Warren and Charlie have been able to achieve at Berkshire Hathaway, and you see, I'm an avid reader of obviously lots of different strategies and books and investment principles and so forth, and, latest news articles on Fin Review and so forth. All, throughout the course of the decades, there's probably been 2 or 3 periods where is value investing dead? The next wave is going to kill off value investing, and this is the next boom or whatever. Right? That's what it feels like for us. And we're trying to say to people that these fads will come and go. The sexy will change, and then the next sexy will come. But Warren and Charlie and their value investing principles have remained true for the decades, and that's what we're trying to teach here in terms of the way to approach this.
All right. So what does a plan look like? Let's give you some tactics. Let's give you something that's fundamental, and judge us on this too. By the way, we are well and truly wanting to be judged the same way. But number one is one size doesn't fit all. All plans must be personalised. They cannot be anything other than specific and tailored to you, right? Because we're all playing different games. So here's a couple of examples. Football. All football teams have one goal, but each player has specific roles around that. Think of Coldplay, Ben, and let's be honest, Coldplay has been in the news of late with Kiss
Yes.
Cam. Is that not the most viral thing you've seen for some time? But Chris Martin, he does he plays the vocal and piano and the guitar, but here's a different plan from Johnny Buckland, who's plays the guitar, and then Guy Berryman, who's playing bass, and Will Champion, who's doing the drums. Although they can sing, and they used to do that in the bedroom back when they weren't who they are now. But they've got different parts that they need to play in order for the big picture to come to fruition. It's the same end result, but personalised plans to get there. Think of it this way: easy to assume that. Let's just talk about sports in general. No, what if you're a swimmer and a boxer? They're two different things, even though you're in the realm of sports. What about cars? No. What if it's sedans and four-wheel drives? What about guitar? No. Well, there's acoustic and electric. What about knives? No, there's chefs versus the butter knife. It's easy to say a label of a plan, Ben, but there's plans and there's plans. And so that's essentially what we're trying to say here. What works for one person could be a disaster for another, but one size does not fit all, Ben.
How many Ed Sheerans are there in the world, Bryce?
Not many.
I can think of one. And now Ed plays guitar, brings in a beat, builds his own tunes and so forth. But I've seen Ed in concert, and guess what? He does have a backing band. And I think, and the reason why we're saying this is we're trying to draw the parallels to specialisation.
Yeah.
One of the things, having helped thousands and thousands of clients, is we think specialisation matters. And in the medical fraternity, you got a GP, but the GP is not going to operate on your heart. It's not going to fix your brain or your spine. It's not going to cure your cancer diagnosis. We send them off to the specialists. And when you're, dealing with people's financial lives, same rule should apply. You don't see too many accountants who are buyers agents who also do your superannuation transitions, do your, what's the other thing that's a specialisation now, transition to retirement, and also old age care and all of those. Like there's really rich specialisations in there. And so even insurances versus wealth, you can do specialisation in terms of personal insurances and protection and defence as opposed to wealth, which is shares, funds and ETFs and so forth. So all we're trying to do here is that every household is different, but you want to basically be able to get practical advice from specialists who have your interests at heart, not necessarily their self-interest.
Yeah, true. So this is documented through the podcast, but some people might not have picked this up, Ben. One of the reasons that you and I are in business together is because of up until meeting you, everything was back-of-napkin, right? Versus the comprehensive. So I want to unpack what a back-of-napkin looks like and what the comprehensive looks like. But a back-of-napkin is usually created during a single chat. It lacks modeling, forecasting, and integration to your broader life goals. It's largely based on just supporting a transaction, and its outcome is based on assumptions, and a ton of them. So it's simple and easy to understand. So that's what a back of napkin looks like. But a comprehensive, and hence what you had to show me many moons ago, why it was so compelling, is because a comprehensive plan it's got cash flow modeling, It has the tax implications, the portfolio design. It keeps an eye on retirement outcomes. So there's all that forecasting as future value versus present value. The outcomes based on your reality, not the vanilla reality or the well-worn path reality. It's actually based on your reality, and it's detailed, and it requires a journey to understand. It requires multiple meetings and multiple layers and multiple iterations to actually go, try this on. Does that work? Try this on. Does this work? Let's put that back on the rack and try this on, because it's actually it's an evolving process to actually get to the point where we've identified your goal and we're working towards it, and it's specific to you, Ben. So I think a lot of the industry, look, let's be honest, some of the players have moved away from back-of-napkin to trying to do some form of tailored approach, Ben.
Yep.
But I would argue that the tailored approach being comprehensive versus generic.
Yep.
We as a business were privy to see recently one of our competitors' presentations, and it was eye-opening for us.
I think, again, there has been simple software that's not back-of-napkin, but it can show a property in isolation. When we start to look at the rigor, because what you're talking about here is, like under the scientific method. So let's think about how science works. Under the scientific method, I have a thesis, I test that thesis, I build data to validate that thesis, and then I get rigor in terms of other feedback around that. And that potentially keeps improving the scientific method, and it proves things like physics, chemistry, and all of these fundamental things that make up our world. Now, we're not at that sort of same rigor, because what we're also dealing with social science. This is the behaviour of humans in terms of how they respond in a market. And that's why we talk about human interest, human behaviour, as well as economic activity. But the point Bryce is making here is, if I don't have offsets linked to loan accounts, which can calculate the interest variance there and the saving variance and the cash flow variance, if I don't have all of those things correctly integrated, really the modelling that I'm doing is loose. And it's the type of modelling that, if I wanted to go to the moon, would never get me to the moon. Whereas the type of modelling that we think about is a model that stands up under rigor that will get you very, very close to the moon, if not on the moon, because that's its intention, right? So I think that's the way I try to look at this, in terms of you get what you pay for. And if you're not paying a fee, then you're really getting napkin advice. If you're paying a small fee, then you're getting some basic modelling by an enthusiastic amateur. But if you're getting a comprehensive model from someone who's got a qualification or is recognised to have done some training in this area, then that's when you start to get the knowledge of the human, and then the capital that comes in the planning work, where you get your best tailored outcome.
Yeah, it's called knowing your client, and the thing is that what I think is the hidden jewel that comprehensive planning offers that others don't is LVRs, Ben, because quite often you see plans where there's multiple properties purchased into the future, but it's all using present value, not future value. And the difference between those two things is largely that a cup of coffee today is cheaper than a cup of coffee tomorrow, largely as a result of inflation. But if you don't factor that in when you're actually buying properties into the future, you will have a skewed read, because your income and your expenses and everything that are happening in the future needs to be relevant for that point in time, that you've got to actually have a view on today. Because then when you approach the bank's going to actually be looking at your portfolio in that future space and determining the loan to valuation ratio, the LVR, in the future, in order to make sure that you can buy these properties that are being proposed for you to buy, particularly when there's 5 and 6 and 7 of these things happening over a journey, Ben. So the LVR modelling alone that needs to be done it's important to understand that key concept, because if you get that wrong, it just becomes a work of fiction.
Yeah, it does. And I think so. Good planning and great planning starts with, what destination are we trying to arrive at? In our case, how does it align to your personal as well as your financial goals? So modelling to those big rocks in the jar. And it's not just the investment strategy, how does that correlate to your dream home, your forever home? How does all of those pieces come together around your kids' family, education, holidays, other investments that you might also want to be making, renovations on the existing home? All of those things should be modelled in a proper plan, as opposed to just one property after the next property after the next property. And we've said this before, you don't build a house one room at a time, because I guarantee you'll be moving walls, you'll be moving things because you just haven't had a big picture think. And that's what you get when you actually sit down with someone who can give you that feedback. The architect, if you engage an architect who's going to give you very rich insights and plans, they're going to ask a lot of questions before they craft something for you, and hopefully, get the vision that you had into the precise measurements needed to actually go ahead and implement and build that outcome.
So what does a great plan actually look like? Well, there's a starting position and a North Star, i.e. where you are and where you want to be. They're your basic 101s, right? But then there's a bucket list between where you are and where you want to be, and all the things that you want to achieve along the way, which therefore spills out a bunch of modeling scenarios. What if we do this way? What if we go down this path? What does the sequencing look like? What does the optimizing look like? Because ultimately we then end up with outcomes. So we've got a starting position, a North Star, we've got a bucket list, we've got modeled scenarios that lead to outcomes. And then that strategy it sort of integrates income, debt with LVR at the time, not just now, and retirement. So they're your basic core fundamentals of what a great plan actually looks like.
And then built with rigor. So back to the scientific method. If as the customer, if I've got lots of questions around the modeling and to show me all the numbers, I can show you the numbers, because they're all built, month on month, year on year, and we can see all of the little nuances in terms of how that's impacting the flow. So we often talk about, making the invisible visible. When you get a napkin plan or when you get a base, there's no rigor. You can't actually see every bit of those numbers. Remember, we've talked about in our planning, there's over 230,000 calculations that occur with every change of a variable. So that's the sort of rigor that we're talking about here in terms of, if you audited it, if you wanted to, really check it out, how much rigor is in it. And that's where, we obviously stand by. That's what a great plan that's comprehensive looks like.
There we go. So, all right. So the next question is, should a buyer's agent prepare a plan for you? All right. And we have buyer's agents in our business. So again, let's declare what's going on here, Ben, so that everyone feels like there's fully informed. Our buyer's agents do not prepare a plan. They're very capable. They are very, very professional and very capable individuals. They understand the plan, but the plan that our buyer's agents work with is provided by a different team, and that team is separate to the buyer's agents. And then our buyer's agents actually then interpret what that separate team has done. So just for clarity, our buyer's agents do not prepare a plan for our clients, because they're skilled at purchasing property, but they are not qualified, licensed, or trained to deliver personalised investment strategies. Now, I'll put a side note. They get it. They've seen so many strategies over the journey that our particular team actually does understand it, but they're not putting their hand up to say, I'm driving the strategy, because that's not their role. Their role is a tactical partner, not your strategic partner.
Can I use another medical analogy here? Let's say, unfortunately, you've had a tumour detected on your body, and it's more than likely cancerous, but they don't know. And so what actually happens is you're going to get MRIs, you're going to get CAT scans, you're going to get blood tests, you're going to get and they're going to bring all of that rich data together. And then that rich data is then going to form a plan around a treatment program. And so with all of that information, the surgeon can then, if it's decided that we're going to surgically remove the cancer, the surgeon then has all that information, and then they decide on their execution of that. And it's no different than when you think about property planning. The property planner is getting all of that information. They're getting all of that purpose stuff and getting all of that data together, and they're delivering a plan of which then if you think about the buyer's agents as the surgeons to go and do the implementation, they're really clear on their brief. They know exactly what they need to be looking for they have an area brief, and then inside that area brief, they then start to work on suburbs and streets and profiles and types of property. So it's a really easy way for the investor to be totally clear in terms of what's going on. What I tend to see in terms of these young, enthusiastic amateurs out in the marketplace is that there's a lot of corners being cut and a lot of unknowns not being prescribed to the end investor. And so they're going on a leap of faith, and that leap of faith is built on the claims, the claims that these people are making. And if they get those things wrong, the claims can set you back. This is what I said last week in last week's show. It's not going to set you back months. It's going to set you back years and maybe even decades.
Yeah, well, to that point, Ben, there's a few things here that a few reasons why we want to run through why you shouldn't use a buyer's agent. One of them is what you just spoke about. They're not necessarily held accountable for their results. So after settlement, most buyer's agents have little involvement in the portfolio performance and the yields and the growth tracking and the rebalancing of your portfolio. So if the property doesn't perform, or if your financial circumstances change, the buyer's agent's not accountable for that outcome. And I think that's important. There's a couple of other things too. They're real estate professionals, not investment advisors. They hold real estate license or registration in their state. Their training includes sales and property law and how to market and trust accounting, but there's nothing in there, Ben. You and I have both done it. So we're both licensed. We're both fully licensed real estate agents, so we can confirm this as a practice, not a theory. That doesn't include investment modeling or financial planning or retirement forecasting. So the buyer's agent is a real estate professional, not an investment advisor. Now, the footnote again, Ben, is that some buyer's agents who are exposed to the planning process can understand. Like, I'm not trying to box them, but the fundamental understanding of a buyer's agent is driven around the real estate transaction. How to get one title to transfer from one person's name to the next, not necessarily around any investment advice. They also don't have a financial license. You've talked about that, so I'm not going to labor on this too hard, but no AFSL license. Only financial planners can provide personal advice. There is a grey area in property, obviously. So we have gone down the path of QPIA, Qualified Property Investment Advisor, but that's just a choice that we've made. There's nothing that there's no requirement for them to document their advice or model their outcomes or act in your best interest. That doesn't exist. So if you offer a strategy, that they are essentially operating out of their legal scope, but there's no recourse around that. But it's just important.
Yeah. Well, we took the view that you would like to know that they've actually studied the discipline and have learned some of the points you made before about really clear about goals and objectives, really clear about risks, because what a lot of buyers agents just completely overlook is the risk profile of the investor and understanding their risk tolerances, their debt tolerances, understanding how they manage their money. All of that is in the field of financial services. So a QPIA does get some of that training as part of the modules that they do to be qualified. So we like to think that we've given them the foundational groundings. But as I just said to you before, there is so much nuance in financial services and giving financial advice, from insurances to wealth to tax advice to estate planning to all of the sort of stuff that comes in old age, in terms of what's available in terms of living in aged care facilities. There's lots of nuance in all of that area. That's why you need to study it. And even self-managed super funds, there's specialization in that area. So you're getting a sense of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, well, to your point, as a result of getting some of that stuff wrong, you might buy in the wrong name or structure, or miss out on tax advantages, or strain your cash flow, or leave you unprotected against risk. So there's no integration into a broader financial plan. The mortgage broker has their role, the accountant has their role, the financial planner has their role. So you got to make sure that that is all being orchestrated.
And some of them are advising them to set a buy-in trusts, Bryce,
Yeah.
so they can hide the other debts that they've got. And they're getting accountants to write letters to say that it's the unregulated nature of it has created, and again, this is conflicted remuneration. It's created this, we've found a little loophole and everyone's running into it with no eyes wide open. They don't understand the unintended consequences that could come of that. And, in terms of giving advice around setting up certain trust structures and those types of things, buyers agents doing that, that's a red flag straight away.
We've seen it, folks. We've actually seen it with our own eyes.
We're building evidence on it right now to present to the regulators, because it's just, we can see that this can ruin lives. Because even in some, we've seen a couple of collapses recently in financial services where these big collapses have happened and they've ruined people's financial superannuation balances and they've lost a huge amount of money. And so we're not huge on regulation, but what we do want is, if we're not going to teach consumers to go out and get educated and get a certificate to invest, and it's the other way around where it's all on the businesses and the onuses of licensing, then we've got to tidy this up, because it's going to get out of hand. And at the end of the day, it doesn't serve the property market well. It also means that affordable houses are going to be, all of this money is going into the cheap market, and that's locking out first home buyers. So it's just because it's all based on speculation.
Yeah, so another point here is the danger of informal, unregulated advice. So if you're hearing stuff like this suburb will boom, buy now before prices rise, negative gearing will reduce your tax, they're just unverified, unregulated opinions, right? But here's the point. You carry the financial risk, not them. If they're wrong, there's no blowback on them. None. Nada. Zippo. Niente. Because you're carrying the financial risk. So that's important. Sometimes their incentives can skew their advice as buyer's agents, right? So they're paid to transact, not to advise. So they may be motivated to push higher value properties or quicker deals, because a lot of buyer's agents get paid on a percentage of purchase price. So they rarely advise clients to delay or not invest, even when that's in the client's best interest. One of our coolest stories, Joel, who's one of our advisors, Ben, I remember it's a decade ago. He had a client by the name of Martin, and he comes in, he gets a plan, and Joel just says, put the key on the rack, you're done, don't buy another one. And he's like, pardon? He goes, yeah, no, you're done, you don't need to buy another one. And I can still remember, and I've had many conversations with Martin around that, and he just goes, I just wasn't expecting that. I was expecting him to say, let's keep going. And Joel said, no, you're done. Let's just retire out the debt, you're good.
And what I also see emerging here, Bryce, is because there's a lot of money in property, right? Commissions, there's lots of money in this space that's flowing around for services, right? In fact, there's even a broking business now who's saying we'll do free buyer's agency service if you get a home loan with us, or you get your investment loan through it. Like, we're seeing all these types of claims and so please, guys, I mean, there are real professionals who operate in this space. There's some great businesses. You only need to look through our back catalogue of the people that we've had on the pod that we've vetted and say these are the good guys in terms of what's doing this. But we are definitely seeing the emergence of this next generation of very aggressive operators who haven't been through any real tough times or understand, when they're playing with other people's money, the responsibility that should be associated with that.
Yeah, agreed, Ben. 100%. And I guess the financial modelling that is absent is the overarching conversation that we're having here.
Yeah.
So there you go, folks. That's why there's a couple of things why we think you shouldn't rely on buyer's agent alone for your property investment strategy. They're real estate professionals, not investment advisors. They don't have a financial license. There is a danger of informal, unregulated advice. Their incentives can skew their advice. There's no integration into a broader financial plan. They're not held accountable for the results. And in our view, and what we've seen, is a lot of the financial modelling is actually absent. So let's bring home some final takeaways here, Ben, because the buyer's agent plays a very valuable role. And we're talking about experienced, competent, professional buyer's agents, right? They provide a very valuable role once a clear, integrated plan is in place. That's the main part here. We just want to make sure there's the delineation there. But sometimes there's advice that helps you, and then sometimes there's advice that's helping the person giving it. So sometimes it's both, but often it's more looks impressive. But the question we should be asking is, who does this really serve? Because the best advice often looks too simple to sell, but it works. It's the kind of advice that helps you move forward, not just nod along ignorantly. So that's what we want to make sure that we avoid, the uninformed nod from someone going, oh, this all just sounds too complex. So if you're in a place where your plan is something that you can live with, or is it just something that you will look at? That's the important distinguisher here. So is it sexy advice, Ben, or is it practical advice? That's ultimately what you need to find peace with when you're making big decisions like this.
Yeah, for mine, as you know, Bryce, I'm always, investing is a game of increasing the probability of success in your favour. So you can potentially try and speculate that on the next big trend or fad, the sexy, as you call it, or you can be boring and practical. And boring and practical has proven over the decades through value investing, fundamental principles around investing to hold true. So we will always be saying to you that economic behaviour and human interest, human behaviour, economic activity are going to be core things that you need to understand. Because back to your point, Bryce, around a buyer's agent, but they want to serve you, and there might be well intentioned to serve you, but Bryce and I have also spent effectively a decade telling you about borderless investing. And so if the best opportunity might be in a different state, territory, a different type of asset, a different type of opportunity, that buyer's agent isn't going to tell you that if all they do is buy in their own backyard or in a particular pocket, right? So for investing, for owner-occupied, 100%. I can understand why specialisation is really needed. But in the age of rich data and and markets within markets, it's really important that you understand what you're getting as part of that. And so comprehensive can stand up under rigor, and then obviously can be executed and have a rich period of experience and proven success, and have been established for a long period. All of those things you want to be thinking about when you choose the type of advisor that you want to work with, to avoid, which is what we started on the conversation, making bad investment decisions. We enjoy helping people who have made those bad decisions, but we'd prefer it if you didn't. We'd prefer it if you start with getting the right advice, the rigor in the right advice, paying for professional services, specialists who know their domain, do all that work and implement that outcome. And that's whether that's us or whether that's one of the other, established, reputable businesses out there. That will help you in terms of not losing your money or losing valuable time in terms of the outcome that you're trying to get to.
Yeah, it all started, Ben, where we were a pioneer. So there was, if we rewind a decade ago, and we were trying to inform people around what this looked like and how you could actually get advice.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward 10 years, we were the one of the only ones in the marketplace. Now we're the premium price in the marketplace, Ben, which is something that we're more than happy to stand by, because hopefully what we've just demonstrated through this conversation is there's no advice, and then there's premium advice, and there's everything in between. And I think that's important, that people stack up what the conversations that they're having with people out in the marketplace, because we are make no mistake, our frontline team are having lots of conversations with lots of people who are coming back, Ben. They're coming back. And it just prompted this conversation today when you and I are planning. It's like, oh my gosh, that's how we started this damn thing in the first place, where we're going, another one got stung. It looks different now. They're going, we went over that side of the fence, and now we're coming back. I mean, if I could read out an email from one of our team this morning, it would boggle your mind. But it was essentially just saying, hey, listen, I went I went and chased the shiny thing. And then once I got under the bonnet, I realised that there was, in the end, they were just saying, hey, look, we think this suburb here's a good one. Why don't you go on realestate.com and just check it out and let us know what you think? That's just throwing darts at a board, right?
Yeah.
And that was a buyer's agency service, Ben. You go and do the research and tell us what you think, and then we'll just execute the contract for you. We'll bill you for it.
Yeah.
So we started as trying to introduce that planning should be a part of the narrative, and we've successfully done that. And now people are doing it, but it's not binary. It's not are you getting a plan or are you not getting a plan. It's a continuum. It's like where on the continuum are you in terms of the advice that you're getting. So have a think about that, folks. But I think we've hopefully prosecuted a case, Ben. And again, people could judge us on what we've talked about too. We're putting ourselves out there. We've got buyers agents, and we've got planning divisions. So you check us out on what we just said as well. See if we're delivering on what we talked about. But
I think that's a good point to finish on, Bryce, isn't it? In the sense that, okay, go and check out the shiny sexy. Ask them rigorous questions, like get your 20 or 30 questions that and see how they answer them, and see if they can show you the detail. Like, hence the scientific method is to put some rigor in terms of some of the questions around that, and then weigh up the value you think you're going to get. Like, how much effort are they putting into research? How much effort are they putting into my numbers? How much analysis are they doing? All of those, because that's what you're paying for. You're effectively buying their time and expertise. That's what you're doing. So I just think, it's easy to be seduced because it looks quick and easy, as per the quote earlier in the show, Bryce. It's a great quote in terms of, but sometimes boring, practical wins out over the decades. May not win out over the short term, as they said with Warren Buffett. He said, I understand that there will be times where boring and predictable will not be what everyone's looking for, but you just watch the compounding nature of what I do over the decades, and you tell me whether that stacks up.
Yeah, well said. All right. Hopefully that helps, folks. If this has been beneficial, it'd be really great if you could screenshot it and send it to someone that could benefit from this, and maybe screenshot the last week's and this week's together, because they really do form a pairing that you can see on the you can see what that practically looks like when you are chasing some of those shiny objects, and hopefully we've achieved our mission here, Ben.
You've just got to understand those trade-offs.
Yes,
like and you will hear about the successes. You won't hear about the failures on social media. No way known, because the ones who have failed aren't going to obviously publicly humiliate themselves.
Yeah.
So all you're going to hear is, and you've used it before, Bryce, on social envy platforms, you see the best of me, my shop front, all the things that I'm doing great. You won't hear about the car wrecks that we get the booker appointment requests and people come in and we're fixing bad property advice. You don't get.
We see what you're seeing is the highlights reel. What we get to see is behind the scenes, and it's remarkable how many people. And it's fair enough; it's human nature. But if they get it wrong, and people just go into shame territory and they don't want to talk about it, which is fine, right? I get it; it's a human emotion.
So one of your questions should be: what happens when it goes wrong?
Yeah.
What happens if this doesn't happen? What happens if this spike is artificial? And there's no economic activity that's going to support those valuations for the next 5 to 10 years. It was fad buying, it was speculative, it was sentiment buying, it wasn't fundamental buying, it wasn't fundamental analysis. I'd be interested to see what happens after that. You're going to be a trader. That's what's going to happen. You're going to have, like all of those bad case studies, the Frankenstein, the HE, every one of them turns into having to trade their properties and restructure because they didn't build the house properly the first time, because they didn't have a plan that was, constructed correctly the first time.
There we go. Hey, my life by design hack today, Ben, is obviously, this, but I've recently put a sauna in my backyard, and I'm in the sauna every single morning, and I love it. So, but I've been trying to find the sweet spot for how long you should be in there, and I found this approach. I ran it through ChatGPT just to double check the data. I'm not a doctor. I'm guide. It's my guide. It's
If
not
you've got
you.
high blood pressure, if all of those other things are a thing.
Yeah. So I'm assuming an intermediate user here who's a healthy body, right? So just get it. Like we're dangerous territory here. It's someone's health, right? So I'm just throwing it out there. But I saw this timeline. It was really helpful that in the first 5, because I have it at 85 degrees, Ben. So the first 5 to 10 minutes is just sweating out toxins. At the 12-minute mark, it increases your heart rate. At the 15-minute mark, it increases blood cells, increases growth hormone, and increases tissue repair. 20 minutes at the 20-minute mark, it has cardiovascular benefits, which increasing heat shock proteins. At the 30-minute mark, there's a decrease in blood sugar, which is good for me, who's a hypoglycemic, an increase in insulin sensitivity. But then after 30, you're risking increase in dehydration, particularly if you're doing this at volume, and an increase in electrolyte and mineral losses. So I've now found the sweet spot for me, Ben, is that sort of 27 to 30-minute mark is where I'm getting the benefit. But one of my mates around the corner is doing it for an hour. So I'm trying to work out where that sweet spot was. So for the sauna lovers, I'd be interested to know what your research suggests around optimum time. But it seems
Bryce, they might want to know, once you get out of the sauna, is there also something else you do, or are we going to get that in another lifestyle?
No. Well, I'm a bit of a sook when it comes to the cold. I've got a bath out the back that I jump in, but I don't stay in it long because it's cold, mate. It's cold. Heat I love, but the cold for me, I'm usually got a 4 mil wetsuit on. So,
very good.
But I do jump in the bath afterwards. But look, again, I'm not a health professional, but it's just a life by design hack.
Yep.
I'm getting up early. I'm in the saunas, and it's helping me enormously. So for those of you that have access to local clubs around your area, and you can get into the sauna. And it's a traditional sauna too, Ben, not infrared. About 30 minutes seems to be the peak that you want to be. So somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes is getting all your benefits. So there you go. There's my life by design hack today. Hey, Ben, what's making property news?
Well, a couple of just important ones. If you haven't heard about some of the new changes in Queensland, we just want to give you a little public announcement statement that there is now what's referred to as a seller's disclosure that you now need to prepare prior to the sale of any properties in Queensland, in the state of Queensland. So we put a link in the show description where you'll be able to get that seller disclosure scheme guidebook. It's quite comprehensive. I mean, at the end of the day, it's taking a little bit of that caveat emptor out in terms of buyer beware stuff. It's making it a little bit more transparent in terms of what you're getting. Not all, because you'll see there's a lot of things that they don't have to disclose. So it's important for you to also know those. So maybe 5 or 10 minutes of reading, even if you're thinking of buying in Queensland, that will just help you out there in terms of what that looks like.
So is it more in line with Victoria, Ben? Victoria doesn't have a lot going for it across the country, but at least for many moons, it's had a vendor Section 32, a vendor statement, and it helps you with your DD, particularly given you've got to do a lot of it before you enter into the transaction. So
you certainly can't substitute Victoria out from not being compliant, heavy price, and not being tax heavy. So it's going to set you back as a seller. As you know, I'm hopeful.
Yeah, that's why you're dark, because you're
selling. Yeah, I'm dark because I haven't quite got the cans sale over the line. I've got an offer on the table.
Money out of your pocket.
But anyway, my rough idea of cost is going to be anywhere between $600 and $1,200 for these types of seller disclosures. So that just gives you a bit of an idea. They'll be more expensive for strata than what they will for freehold. So just hopefully, and as we see more of them settling in, we'll start to see where those prices go. Just quickly, obviously it's we're into the month. We can see the results coming through for the property market. I'm not going to spend too much time in it, but we saw July's price increase 0.6 across the national dwelling values. Bryce and I will be doing our mid-year outlook in a couple of weeks' time, so we will spend more time in that now. But look, the rising tide is lifting all ships. We do know that. We're very confident of a rate cut I
Weren't you
couldn't have been
confident
more
last
confident
time?
in July, but now I will be proven that 5-week wait didn't really have to happen. But anyway, it did. They said they're going to take their time,
Yeah.
but we're pretty confident. So what's that mean? It is going to be a trade-off between sentiment and activity versus affordability. That is going to be where most of the commentators are thinking more steady growth, but I can still make cases in certain pockets of the market where we're going to see outperform results. So we'll talk to you more about that in our market outlook in a couple of weeks.
Yes, we will. So there we go, folks. Hopefully covered some big ground for you today. Hopefully that's helpful. And again, if you could share that with someone who you think could benefit from hearing this message, we would appreciate you helping us spread the word, mate. But until next week.
Knowledge is empowering, but only if you act on it, Bryce.
Act on it, folks. See you next week.